September was a good reading month in my head, but when looking at the stats, was it? In September, I read a total of 10 books, which is average for me. It is kind of what I hope for every single month. 10 books is a solid amount for me. I've read more, I've read less, but 10 is probably what I strive for. It came out to a total of 4,699 pages, probably average again. I read somewhere between 4,500 to 5,500 typically in a month. That becomes an average page count per day of 156 pages and makes the average page count of a book 469 pages. What a great average page count. My most read genre was fantasy this month. This is the first month all year where fantasy has gone bigger than fantasy romance. Fantasy romance has been my most read genre every single month until this month. I gave out 1 5-star, 3 4-stars, 6 3-stars, 0 2-stars, and 0 1-stars. I think this is why I think it was a good month, even though statistically it doesn't look like it, because 3 stars aren't necessarily like a great rating. I think that it means it's a good book, just not like a great book, but my lack of 2 or 1 stars is pretty impressive for me, and having a 5-star and a decent amount of 4 stars. Like, yes, I gave out a lot of 3 stars, but I'm happy those weren't lower ratings, and I enjoyed every single book I read this month because I DNF'd a lot. I DNF'd a lot of books in September. My average star rating is 3.50. I promise if I did not DNF, it would have been a lot lower. Maybe that's a sign that I should DNF more. I definitely am an anti-DNFer, just personally. Like, it just hurts my soul to DNF a lot of the times, but it was kind of freeing this month, so maybe I'm on a DNF journey. And then I read 6 fantasy books and 4 fantasy romance. Interesting for me. Very, very interesting. Is epic fantasy back? Is it not dead? Who knows? Just kidding. It was never dead. Don't quote me on that. It was literally never dead. It's just a joke I like to make now because of the trend that went around. Let's start my reviews. The first book I read this month was Legacy of Steel. I read this for my series book video. Also, shout out to all of you guys for making that my best performing vlog on my channel. It is doing crazy good right now. If you haven't checked it out, please do. I actually really enjoyed that and I can't wait to make episode 2. It made me pick up this bad boy, which is a TBR vet on my channel this series. This is the second book in the Legacy trilogy. I read the first one probably 4 years ago now, like start of my booktube channel, and I gave it 4 stars, but I hadn't continued. He's a chunky boy. This is 768 pages. I was shocked by how much I remembered about this book, having not read the first book for so long, but I feel like I picked this book up really easily, and I think that goes to show how unique this book was in this story. This world felt like something so different than anything I've read, and it still does, which, like, 4 years later, reading 100 books a year, unique is a term that, like, sometimes does not happen. But the characters in this, the world building really sucked me in once again. I ended up giving this book 3 stars, but I have very pleasant thoughts on it. It's just a long boy, and no book should be this long in my opinion. So there was a slump in the middle, and that's what ended up giving it 3 stars. But at one point I did think this could have been a 5-star. This follows a world where there was a rebellion, but the rebellion failed and the rebellion leader was murdered. Now in the current day, her kids are being held political hostages in order to keep that nation that rebelled in control, and we watch the like corruption that exists within the society still bloom again, and how maybe a rebellion will not fail this time if the right people are a part of it. It is a political military fantasy. There is battle scenes in this and I really enjoy them. I don't think I've read from an author who can write battle scenes the way Matthew Ward does. If you love like sprawling epic fantasies, Brandon Sanderson, Robert Jordan, things like that, pick this series up. It is only a trilogy, but since each book is so long, it definitely feels longer, and I would definitely recommend it. Then I dived into my SBFBO reads. I have a whole vlog reading all 5 of those on my channel if you want like in-depth thoughts. We started with Lizard Skin and Sharpened Steel. I give this one 3 stars as well. I did really enjoy this. This is about a mercenary company going on a job to get a dinosaur egg, essentially a T-Rex egg, which is very dangerous. So they hire some natives to this dinosaur land to show them the way to get them safely to this spot that they need to get the eggs from. But as we go on this journey with them, dinosaurs are unpredictable and they are ruthless. We watch them as nature rebels against what they're going to do. I did enjoy this. It is Jurassic Park vibes. Like, essentially I feel like Jurassic Park 2 it really reminds me of. This book is really action based. There was a lot of like action dinosaur scenes. I really liked the dinosaur scenes. As a dinosaur or girly, I would recommend this story, but I feel like the characters needed just a little bit more heart to make me feel and root for them. But overall, I did enjoy this one and I gave it 3 stars, and I might continue if a sequel ever comes out. Up next is The Last Lunar Witch, which I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. This was outside of my comfort zone. This is like a paranormal-ish urban witchy fantasy. Essentially, in this world, witches are kind of recluse and they kind of keep to themselves, so they have their own cities. We follow our main character who has magic that she can't control, and if a witch can't control their magic, they're sentenced to have their magic taken away. However, our witch can control her magic enough to make potions, and she doesn't want to give that up, so she's been hiding the fact that she can't control her magic this entire time. In order to live her life, she ends up leaving her city and going to a metropolis, which has like a bunch of fantasy creatures living there all together in harmony, and her parents make her a deal that in 1 year's time, if she can prove to them that she can exist without them, that her magic is not volatile, they will let her continue to live her dreams, but if not, she has to come back and get her magic taken away. When in this metropolis, she makes a lot of friends. She starts to work at a coffee shop that divine creatures come to. The coffee shop itself is a creature and it's like sentient and alive, and the ovens are sentient, and there's a lot of like cozy vibes within this coffee shop and the found family aspects. But then there's stakes because she learns of a plot to like destroy the world that she is at the center of, and she has to stop this evil wizard from destroying the world with the help of all her friends. I thought this was just like fun. Like, I really enjoyed my time with this. I thought the characters were fun. They could have used a little bit more depth, but like I still enjoyed them. I still rooted for them. I liked learning about the magic and the world building and all the different creatures and how they fit into society. I thought this was a lot of fun. If you like cozy fantasy but you're looking for like stakes slightly, I would recommend this. Like, it's not cozy fantasy because cozy fantasy typically has low stakes, but it's got a cozy setting, a cozy atmosphere to go along with these higher stakes that it has. I really enjoyed this one. Next up we have A Rose Among Thorns, which I also gave 4 stars. This was actually my Senlin pick for SBFBO, and if you don't know what that means it was not my finalist. I nominated it as a Senlin, saying like, this was good, I almost picked it. If any other judge wants to read this and pick it for themselves, they can. Like, essentially I'm just giving this book a second shot to be a finalist somewhere. I read through this so quickly. I adored it. Again, it's like an urban fantasy. It is set in our world. We follow our main character who gets a call from her aunt saying her aunt needs to go on vacation. She needs someone to come watch her shop, which is like a greenhouse and nursery thing. Our main character can't deny her aunt, so she goes and packs up her stuff and goes there, and within a few days of going to the shop, a fae shows up as a human and says, "What the heck are you doing here? The shop was set to be," why can't I think of the word? When someone comes to like review it to make sure you can still work and that everything is going according to plans, I cannot think of the word right now, but like a review. It's going for a review and you do not have access to the magical world. Essentially, this greenhouse is not only a greenhouse for humans, but has a whole fae realm community, magical community. It is set within 2 realms so that it can grow the way it does in the human world, but have magical properties of the fae world. I thought that was really cool. This fae says, "Leave now, I'll take care of the shop. I'll figure out what's going on. Why did your aunt leave you? Blah, blah, blah." There's like a mystery about why the aunt would leave her knowing this was coming up. That's kind of the plot of the book, I can't lie. I feel like I just like loved the characters and stuff, but that is the plot of the book. There is like this intrigue and mystery of like what is going on with her aunt, and her main character is like, the aunt left me in charge, I'm gonna stay here. And so these two have to work together to figure out what exactly was going on and also keep the greenhouse afloat and like don't let anyone know that something sus is happening with it. I really enjoyed this. Again, it just had like a cozy atmosphere to it, and there was like a mystery intrigue happening that really kept me turning the pages. I really enjoyed them. I enjoyed the 2 characters as they learned to work together. There is no romance in this book, but like I definitely could see some happening in future books, but their friendship and like the little moments they had together of laughing as they related to each other, because fae and humans are so different. They didn't think that they could be friends, and them finding a friendship was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed this, and I hope more people read it. It's really short and I had a fun time with it. Then I read The Oathsworn Legacy, which I gave 5 stars. This was my pick for SBFBO. I'm spoiling that video for you. This is a classic fantasy tale told in like a short story format. We have someone telling a story, kind of like in Along the Razor's Edge or Assassin's Apprentice. Someone's like writing down a story and telling it to us. Unlike both of those, it is not our main character telling the story, so like there are some stakes there because like you don't know who survived and who didn't. We follow these 2 brothers on a journey of something in their childhood. A monster killed their parents, and so they decide to be monster hunters, and we follow them as they grow up and they go on all these different journeys and mercenary hunts to kill these monsters, and it slowly grows and they grow and their like people grow because they find others that they relate to, and there's like a found family aspect. And the short story format of it worked so well for me, of like, it's not technically short stories, it's like a chapter and then a chapter, but like they're written like short stories. Like there's like time jumps in between and we're following like a very specific thing. And I thought it was incredibly done. I cared so much for these characters and every journey they went on, and everything mattered. Like I was not expecting things that happened in the first couple stories to come back around so intensely, whether it was an actual plot moment or just like building on like a character story arc at some point. I loved the characters in this. I cried multiple times reading this book. Since it's following two brothers, the sibling relationship is like a core thing in this story, and I think it's done so incredibly well. I related as a younger sibling to the struggles of the younger sibling, but I also understood that that's what my older sibling feels as well, like this protectiveness to protect me, and like sometimes being so frustrated with your older sibling, like just let me do something. You don't always have to protect me. Like I can protect you sometimes. Like those deep moments were so good in this story. I hope more people read it. It's got a really sprawling world building. I was always excited to learn what monster we were going to stumble across next. If the monster was going to be bad and we were going to kill it, or if it was going to be like a monster that people thought of was bad, but in truth there was just like a misconception about it and the monster was going to join us. And I really, really, really enjoyed this one. I'm so excited that I could push this off as a finalist. I'm excited for more people to read it. I can't wait to just hear everyone love it. I'm hoping I get no negative reviews because like I loved this so much. It is so good in my opinion. After that, my last book at SBFBO was Blood of the Stars. I gave this one 3 stars. I liked this one. I didn't love it. The first half was just far too long for me. Oops, I still have a bookmark in here. The first half was just too long for me, and by the time I got to the parts that I really, really liked, I wasn't as invested because of that first half. It was a lot of traveling. It was a lot of moments of our characters not being together and a lot of info dumping. I'm not a traveling girly. I can't lie. I don't really like to watch stories of people just like traveling and like talking as they travel, you know? So that just kind of didn't work for me within the story, but I really, really, really liked the latter half when we started getting a little more action, when our characters met up and they were having interactions together. The world building in this was cool. Like it's got blood magic in it, but also the stars are like gods in it. We're essentially following a character who has been kidnapped when she was young, and she is with a group that keeps using her blood to do magic, and the blood magic is bad and it's letting like evil spirits into them, and when she escapes them she ends up learning a lot more about who she is, her past, and she has to stop the people that were stealing her magic because it's part of a larger scope and thing. Bad people that want to take over the world, and she doesn't want to let the blood magic exist, and she has to take them down. And she also finds out that they have her mother and she wants to save her mother. I don't know. I liked this. I didn't love it. I would recommend it to people. A lot of my patrons were reading this because Mel really liked it and they all really enjoyed it. I would say you'll know really early on if you'll enjoy this. If you're not obsessed with the first half, I wouldn't continue. Even though the later half was so good, it just didn't make up for such a drag in the first half for me. But it is like a YA coming of age story, and it has a lot of things I don't like in it, like journeying. It has healing magic. It has visions. These things that I personally like don't enjoy, but if you do in like a classic setting, check this one out still. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. And then I read Reckless, which is the sequel to Powerless. Powerless was one of my favorite reads of last year, so I'm very disappointed to say that I gave this book 3 stars. Again, this is a traveling book. Essentially, the first book we followed our main character who is powerless in a world where they killed the powerless, and she ends up tricking them into thinking she has this really special magic, and she ends up in this trial thing that they do every single year, and the person who wins it gets like a bunch of glory. It's like all these kids with powers that do it, and she has to compete and survive in it, and she ends up befriending both of the princes within it, and they help her survive within these trials. There's a betrayal, like there is in these books, at the end of arc 1, and book 2 continues from that point, but it ends up just being our 2 characters on a journey as they bicker and banter, which I do love the banter. The banter is one of my favorite things of book 1. I wish we had gotten more of it. I feel like there was more cute moments in this than like spicy bantery moments, just because of where their relationship was at and where they were internally with what was going through their heads. But I did like it. I did tab it. I did enjoy this. Just a story with just 2 people interacting. It just gets so repetitive to me. It's very character driven. It's very much about these 2 characters characters. I definitely needed more action. I wish that we had been with our characters from the start, like from the first book. I'm excited because the end of this book, I think book 3 will be back in that setting. I loved the castle with all the friends we had made. I realized that I really liked Kit's POVs within this, which were back in that setting as he talked to these people that we grew to know and loved within book 1. So I think that was something for me that didn't work. It was just like too much about those two and not about the overall arching storyline and like the characters. I truly love moments with not just two characters, and although I liked this, it just kind of went around in circles in my opinion, and I still ate it up. I still enjoyed it. I still loved all the cute moments they had and when they were fighting and they were like joking and smiling, but like some of it is so repetitive. Like the amount of times they were told to pretend in this, I was like, okay, I get it. But I am excited for book 3. I think book 3 will kill it, and this is just middle book syndrome. After that, I read The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen. I gave this book 4 stars. I did enjoy it. I loved the trial element of this. A good trial will get me. The romance didn't necessarily hook me in this. I actually kind of felt like it was cringe. I did enjoy them together and I liked their scenes together, but I wasn't like absolutely obsessed rooting for them like because they were absolutely incredible together. But I loved watching the trials. In this, the gods have a competition every couple years to find out who will be the king of Olympus, and to do this they pick a human to be their champion that competes within this competition. There's a lot of death in this competition, like bad things happen. Gods don't really care about humans. Their lives are fickle and like all of that, you know, stuff. Hades doesn't normally compete because he's the king of the underworld, so he does not need to be the king of Olympus as well. But this year something's happened and Hades has decided to compete within this tournament. The gods are angry. They're scared. They don't really like Hades. He of course picks our main character to compete in this. She's got a big heart. I think that carried this book for me. I enjoyed her moments with her friends as she like believed in people and she did the right thing even when it would cost her, and I think that that really kept the story alive for me. It was nice to read about someone who thought that they were such a bad person but at every turn made the good person decision, and you're like, no, like screaming at them like, you are amazing. Same with Hades. Like he's the god of the underworld, but he was making like good people decisions over the gods that were supposed to be the good gods. Like, fuck Zeus. I mean, if anyone knows the Greek gods, Zeus was never good. The trials in this are what carried it for me. I loved each and every trial. I was always excited to see how the trial would come to play, what it was going to be. I did like some of the gods. The Aphrodite scenes were some of my favorite. I always loved her as a god, and I'm glad that that continued within this story. I don't know, I enjoyed this. I think the trials were fun. It's a little bit more YA leaning than the new adult romantasy that I feel like it is pitched as, but there is a smut scene in it. It is a series, and I think it reads kind of like a standalone to me. Like, I don't know how excited I will be to pick up the next book. I probably will still pick it up knowing me, but like I would have been happy with this being a standalone. But overall I enjoyed it. It is The Hunger Games meets Percy Jackson and the Olympians. That sounds good to you. Please pick this one up. I enjoyed it. It's a fun read. There's not like a lot of depth to it, but it's a lot of fun. And right after that I picked up Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. If you follow me on Instagram or watch my vlog where I read this, you already know that I absolutely fell in love with this series. This first book I technically only gave 3 stars. This is so fun though, and as the series goes on, each book gets better in my opinion, and by book 4 I was utterly obsessed dreaming about these characters, asking Nick if we could add more men to our relationship so that I could live these moments out. This follows our main character where her dad goes missing and she goes to look for him. She stumbles into a Fey realm and finds her dad as prisoner. She bargains herself with these 4 Fey princes that are there to give herself to them in place of her father. So her father goes back to the human world and she stays there as their prisoner, but they don't lock her in the dungeon really. And as night comes, she learns that they have a curse on them. Every night they will turn into wolves, and the only way this curse will break is if they find their mates. She says, well, can I earn my freedom by helping you find your mates? When you break your curse, I also get to go free. The thing that she realizes as she tries to help them find their mates is that she's actually in love with not 1, not 2, but all of them, and finding their mates might crush her if it's not her. This is a why choose fantasy romance. I can just tell you that the next book I read, the last book I read in September, was the second book, so I'll put that on the screen. I gave that one 4 stars, this one 3 stars, that one 4 stars. The next 2 books in the series were my first books of October, and I gave them both 5 stars. Spoiler for next month. This is a true like poly romance in my opinion. There are scenes with the men without about her, they all end up making like a found family, and I really, really liked that aspect. Within this first book, I had a lot of fun, but I wanted to know more about the characters and the depth in the plot. The second book, we really start to see our characters shine. I still wanted more plot within the second book, which is why I got a 4 instead of a 5, but it gets better every single book. Just trust me and pick this up. I felt so much for these characters as I continue to read the series. It's really hard to talk about this because I'm so clouded by my thoughts of book 3 and 4 that I'm trying to remember what I exactly thought about 1 and 2. I just binged this series. I read them back to back. So like separating them in my brain is kind of hard. This is just like an introduction to all the guys. Book 2 is the Autumn Court, I believe. I have so much fun reading Why Choose because I love tier ranking of the men, and I love like talking to people who are also reading them so we can do it together. Me and Claire Buddy read this, and I think that added to my enjoyment. Like if you look through our chat, it was literally just a screaming. We were at different parts, but we were just like screaming, oh my god, amazing, I love this, what's going on, oh my god, my heart, I can't take this, like hard eyes, things like that. And it was a lot of fun to buddy read with her. I don't have a lot to say besides that I like fully loved this. There is a good plot that happens within these stories. It does take a while to take off, in my opinion. Book 1 and book 2 probably could have used more, but push through this. It's fun. You'll be giggling, you'll be screaming. There's a man in this for everyone. If you like friends to lovers, if you like enemies to lovers, if you like a Loki style villain, if you like a sweet shy boy with like a mask on his face, if you like forbidden love, like things like that. Like there's everything in this story, and I highly recommend it. I need to read more fantasy Why Choose. Falling in love with this series made this a great month for me, even if I read like the 2 better ones in the next month. Let me know what your favorite read of the month was down below, and if you would like to hear me screaming, crying, throwing up about this series, I will leave the vlog that I read these in on the screen for you. It was a great week in my opinion. If you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me an emoji that has a window in it, and have yourselves an absolutely amazing day.